Hello, welcome back to the Advent study with Jotham's Journey. Are you so excited to find out, are these the Magi? Oh my goodness, I tell you what, this is getting good in here in this story. So, let me read this to you before we do our actual story reading. A day of the Lord is coming. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and on the Mount of Olives, it will be split into. Zechariah 14, that's in. Oh, there are many believing that Messiah is yet to come. And he will come on the Mount of Olives. Check your heart. Is that the only time he will come? Or has he already come time one time? And then, of course, a second time in our hearts when we receive him as the Lord of our lives. You know, when you let God be the Lord of your life, you actually have a life. I mean, seriously, beyond any expectation of what you could have dreamt. Let me tell you, dream as big as you want. Dream as big as you want, because there is no dream too big for God. Sorry, I had to move. You can see part of my thing behind me. There's no dream too big for God. In fact, God's dreams for you are so much bigger. Man, I'm telling you. So, I want you to think about this as we go through this story now. Number one, is it his first coming or his second coming? Look inside yourself. And is he in your heart? Does he live in your heart? Is he the Lord of your life? Now, I often say there's one thing to say, hey, I'm a Christian believer, and, you know, I believe that Jesus is Lord, and there's another thing to say, and I've given him the driver's seat in my life. That's totally different, in my opinion. Because when we put him in the driver's seat of our life, then he really, really, really is directing our life, isn't he? Truly is directing our life, and then can lead us in the way we should go. And then no matter what is happening in life, good, bad, or indifferent, he's on the throne of our hearts. And we know that we know that we know he's going to take care of us. And folks, I'm not saying this just to sound I don't know what, but I'm really being serious because I've been there. So with that, let's read together. Tonight's story is called Saints. Jotham was dreaming. He was on one of the great ships that travel at the sea. He had seen such ships as his family camped along the Mediterranean, and now he saw himself standing on the bow of one giving orders. But then there was a foul smell in the air, and his nose tickled. He awoke with a start and discovered his face was buried deep in the fur of a camel's back. Ugh, he cried. Good morning. Jotham looked around the head of the camel to see where that voice had come from. It was Ishtar's servant, down below, leading the camel. It was only then that he noticed Ishtar riding behind him between the camel humps. What a visual that is. Good morning, Jotham called down to the servant. How did I get up here? Late in the night, you fell asleep as you walked. Oh. So I lifted you and Ishtar to the camel's back. Suddenly, Jotham remembered the excitement of the night before and their quick departure. He had never heard of a caravan traveling at night, but no one seemed to mind the sudden exodus or a lost night of sleep. Now the morning sun shone on their backs, and they were moving still, heading west towards Jerusalem. What is going on here? The voice sounded like the bawl of a newborn lamb. It was Ishtar, now sitting up straight behind Jotham. "Good morning, friend," Jotham said. "It is morning, and we still travel towards Jerusalem." Jotham saw out of the corner of his eye that Ishtar was looking upward. "The star is gone," he said. "I will speak to my father." With that, Ishtar slid down off the camel and ran forward along the caravan, which wound slowly back and forth in the sun. Jotham decided he'd just as soon stay put and enjoy the ride for a while. A few minutes later, Ishtar returned. "My father said we followed the star all night," Ishtar reported as he walked alongside the camel. "They set their sights on it and follow its course still." "Will we be stopping today?" Jotham asked. "Yes, but only for a few hours to rest. My father wants to continue as long as the star appears each night." "Does he know where we are going?" "The star takes us in the direction of a great city, a direction of the great city, Jerusalem. But there is no way to know how far from that direction we must go, or if the star will lead us in a different direction." Jotham nodded, and he was pleased. "Jerusalem is exactly where I want to go," he thought. "It's where my family will be gathered for the census." The caravan continued moving for another hour, and then finally a halt was called, and everyone lay down for a few hours to sleep. Only a few tents were put up for the women. All of the men slept out in the open. Jotham and Ishtar weren't tired, though, since they had slept on the camel all night. So they set about exploring the desert plateau on which they were camped. There wasn't much to see on the plateau, mostly scrub, brush, and sand. But the boys found plenty to do. They chased scorpions and snakes, except for the ones they knew to be dangerous, and tried to catch a few small animals that they saw. But then, just before noon, they saw a rare sight. A silver fox was prowling around the bushes, stalking a hare a few feet away. Carefully, Jotham and Ishtar worked their way through the brush, trying to sneak up on the fox. When they were 20 feet away, the fox heard them and took off running. The two boys went after it, leaping over scrub brush and rocks and laughing all the way. They scrambled up boulders at the top of a hill, and Ishtar was about to jump down the other side when Jotham suddenly screamed and grabbed him by the collar. "Decca!" Jotham screamed. But because there, camped among the rocks, was Decca of Megiddo, looking tired and dirty and beat up and very, very angry. Ishtar screamed then too, even though he didn't know why. But Jotham knew, and in that instant, he saw that they had taken Decca by surprise as he ate his breakfast. Farther down the hill, Jotham saw two of Decca's men were sleeping on a rock. They had awakened at the screams from the boys, and they were just getting up to their feet. "Run!" Jotham yelled, and the two boys raced off down the hill. They ran back to the caravan, but it was in the valley around several hills. Jotham's feet pounded into the ground, sometimes slipping on loose rocks or catching in a bit of sagebrush. Jotham looked behind them and saw that Decca was indeed chasing them and seemed to be getting closer. The two boys rounded a hill, and Jotham lost sight of Decca. In the next instant, Ishtar screamed. When Jotham looked back, Ishtar had disappeared. He skid to a stop and looked frantically around. Finally, he heard a faint cry, and when he looked at where it had come from, he saw a hole in the ground between two clumps of sagebrush. The hole wasn't much bigger than Jotham, and he couldn't understand how Ishtar had failed to see it. A moment later, Ishtar's head popped up out of the hole. "Ugh!" he yelled, looking at his dirty tunic in disgust. Jotham heard the pounding of Decca's footsteps coming from the other side of the hill. In an instant, he realized they could never beat Decca back to the caravan now. And they did the only thing there was to do. With a mighty leap, he jumped into the hole on top of Ishtar, and the two boys slammed into the floor of the cave with a thud. Ishtar started to open his mouth in protest, but Jotham quickly clamped his hand over his friend's face. Both boys listened as Decca's running feet ran past the cave and kept going. After a few moments, Jotham let go of Ishtar. "Ow!" yelled the Persia boy. "That hurt!" "Trust me," Jotham said, panting. "It would hurt a great deal more if Decca were to catch us." Jotham's eyes began to adjust to the light, and he could see that the cave was actually part of a tunnel that ran for a great distance in both directions into the dark. He thought for a moment, then tore a piece of his tunic and wrapped it around a stick, as he had seen Nathan do. Then he found a flint stone and lit his makeshift torch. "What are you doing?" Ishtar said. "We're going to follow this tunnel," Jotham answered. "We're what?" "We cannot go back outside," Jotham continued. "Decca and his men have probably already figured out that we did not make it back to the caravan and are hiding somewhere. They will be searching the area above us." Ishtar looked at the rock ceiling over their heads and shuddered. "Then let us move quickly," he said. "Which direction shall we go?" Jotham looked back and forth and then turned to his left. "This way," he said. And slowly they climbed through the jagged edges of the tunnel with Jotham in the lead. All of a sudden, the floor of the tunnel leveled out. "Men must have been here before," Jotham thought to himself. "The floor is too flat and smooth to just be a cave." The boys edged their way forward, hearts pounding in their chests, thinking that maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Jotham kept imagining scorpions hiding in the dark cracks of the rocks and snakes hanging from the ceiling. He was just about to say that they should turn back when Decca's voice came haunting them through the cave. "Little one," came the faint but evil voice. "Little one, come back to me. I am going to kill you, little one. You may run, but I am going to catch you and kill you." Jotham's heart raced, and he pushed on through the darkness, not caring any more about snakes or scorpions. "Friend of the little one," came the voice again, "listen to me. I will not harm you. Bring your friend to me, and I shall spare your life." Jotham's eyes grew wide, and he looked at Ishtar. And Ishtar gave him a look that said, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." Jotham smiled, and they ran on. Give him a look like, "Yeah, like I'd really like to do that." Jotham smiled, and they ran on. They barely even noticed as they passed through an archway cut into the rock. But a moment later, they would skid to a stop and scream once again. "It is death! It is death!" Ishtar cried. "Run!" Jotham shouted. But both boys stood there, having great, terrified breaths, transfixed by what they saw. Cut into the walls of the cave in front of them were small alcoves, and in each alcove was a dead body wrapped in cloth. "We must leave this place," Ishtar cried. But neither of them could move. They inched their way forward, looking at the bodies in the torchlight. The alcoves were cut out of the rock, extended far as the boys could see. Each was slightly bigger than the corpse that was in it, and each body was wrapped in a fine linen cloth. "Who would do such a terrible thing?" Ishtar asked, his nose scrunched in disgust. "What terrible thing?" Jotham panted, his own face twisted in horror at the sight. "Put dead bodies in a cave." with no sarcophagus. What is a sarcophagus? Sarcophagus, Ishtar corrected. A burial box. I've never seen anyone buried in a box before. My people just wrap the dead ones in burial cloths and cover them with spices. Ishtar thought that was pretty crude and very cruel, but didn't say anything. The boys realized that Decca could reach them at any moment, and they started up the tunnel again. After a few minutes, the evil voice returned, a little louder this time. Little one, look. It's the bodies of your ancestors. What a good place for you to die. Then there came a screeching, evil laugh, and Jotham ran a little faster. Jotham and Ishtar ran for what seemed like hours. They were almost as afraid of the dead bodies as they were of the evil voice that was slithering behind them through the dark every few minutes. Finally, the tunnel ended in a huge room filled with stone carvings. Jotham's torch was getting short now, and he tore another length from his tunic. The room seemed as big as a temple to the boys, and all around its walls were cut tall archways that led to other tunnels. The archways were decorated with carved images of ancient ancestors in long robes. One was of Moses parting the sea. Another showed a man being spit out of a great fish. In others, men and women were leading camels, fighting wars, and praising God. Then, in the dim light, they came across a flat, white stone with writing on it, and Ishtar gasped. Jotham looked at him in amazement. You can read this, he said, surprised that any boy of 10 could read much of anything. Yes, Ishtar said, barely able to whisper. It says, we wait in peace, for this is the place where Messiah shall come to earth. At that moment, the voice of the devil cut through the dark only inches behind their ears. I am here, little one. Decca hissed like a snake. And then Jotham, he screamed for the last time. Ooh, that's where it ends. My gosh. What's going to happen? This Decca just doesn't give up. We thought he was dead. He's not dead. And they're so close to Jerusalem. Wow. I want to just talk about our scripture again for a second, kind of reeling us back as we finish our study. But I want to read a different scripture now. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. I think sometimes we can be so quick to judge how other people are living their lives and not judging ourselves. And that is who we are supposed to judge, right? Sorry, I gotta move. It's ourselves. We're supposed to be judging our lives. What we believe should make a difference in the way we live. Wow. Think about that. What we believe should make a difference in the way we live. What do you believe? What do you believe Christmas is all about? Advent is the perfect time to take a deep look at our spiritual lives. Where's your spiritual life at? And how does that relate to how you live your life? Does our faith make a difference in the way we think or act towards others? Or are we just religious clanging gongs? Do we love the Lord enough to let Him take our self-centeredness away, thinking that we have all the answers? Many Jews are so anxious for the coming of Messiah that they have themselves buried near the place that they believe he will make his appearance. See, I touched on this at the beginning. On the Mount of Olives near Jerusalem. While we Christians, we believe that the Messiah has already arrived. Although it is true, Zechariah 14, we do know it is true that the Bible tells us that his second coming is to that mountain. Search me, O God. Search me, O God, and know me. Take away any selfishness and self-centeredness in me. Christmas. It's where the rubber meets the road. What do you believe? And is it affecting your life? And is it affecting how you act and how you think? If we can really say Psalms 139 with sincerity, and that's what I just read to you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensiveness in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. Christmas will be so much merrier for us if we not only can say that with sincerity, but we are willing to let God shed the light on the dark tunnels in our heart, our lives. So important. We can get hung up on first and second coming. Christmas is about the coming of baby Jesus the first time, true. But we can get so hung up on our religious beliefs that they're no longer faith beliefs. They're no longer affecting how we live our lives every day. And we can get all kinds of dark tunnels in our heart and in our lives filled with junk. And there's a spot that has been placed in our heart that where Messiah is supposed to be. And we're not there. That's where we need to get to. Why not Advent season? Merry Christmas to you. We'll see you tomorrow. Blessings.